Okay, so today we are writing equations. Last week I gave you an equation and you had to describe and graph. Today I'm going to give you the description and you have to graph and write the equation. I'm also going to give you the graph and you have to write the equation. So really what you need to be able to do is start at any point in the process and identify all of the other points, okay? So you need to be able to work with the description, work with an equation, work with the graph, all of the above, okay? Okay, so I'm going to do a couple with you, and then you're going to do some you tries, and then we'll go back and forth. So first, this says write the equation of the described function and sketch the graph. So I'm giving you a description. You need to write the equation and graph it. So I'm going to help you with this. So first, it says an absolute value function that was shifted up 5 units and right 3 units. So what kind of function am I looking for? What does it say? What is the name of the function I'm using for number 1? Absolute value. The kind of function. Absolute value. And what does that look like when I write it? Yeah, okay, so it looks like a V. What does the equation look like, though? Yeah, with the vertical bars. So it's going to look like this. So I like to write the parent equation right there just so I have an idea when I write the actual function, okay? The next part I like to do is always label A, H, and K. Even if there isn't a value for one of them, I like to label all of them just so that I have it and I can fill it in later. Okay, so what's a piece of information that I'm given? I know it's an absolute value function. What else do I know? It was shifted up 5 units. Now, is up 5 units, is that A, H, or K? Is that H or K? A, H, or K? That's going to be K. Up and down is K. What other information do I have? Right, 3 units. Now, is that A or H? H. And do I have an A value in here? No. So what number do I write? Is it 1 or 0? It's 1. For A, it's 1. For H and K is 0. So to write the equation, I have f of x equals, do I write the a value? What is the a value? 1. So do I have to write 1 in my equation? No. Okay, so then I have a times the absolute value of x minus h plus k. That will be my equation. Is that okay so far? Now, what do I have to do next? What's the other part of this question? It says graph. So before I graph, I like to use my table. So, from the board, which table am I going to use? The first one, the second one, or the third one? The first one, second, or third? Second. Good. Absolute value is the second table. Now, do I have to multiply by an a value? What is the a value on this question? The a value is 1, so I don't have to multiply it by it. Later I might have to. And then I'm going to draw my axes a little bit off-center this time because I know that I'm going to need to go right and up. So I want to make that quadrant have a little bit more space so I don't run out of room on my graph, okay? So to plot these points, I'm going to go to negative 1, 1, 0, 0, and 1, 1. Now, what do I do with each of those points? How do they move? Right, how many units? 3, and then what? And then up 5. So I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, and up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do I have to draw those squigglies every single time? No, I'm just doing that so you can see, okay? If you don't put that on your paper, go right ahead. I'm putting that up here because sometimes you have a hard time seeing where these points come from. So I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I graph this, that will be my final graph, okay? So all you really need on this problem is the equation and the orange graph. But all that other information helps me to find those two things. Okay, you don't have to include any of it. But you do have to have the equation and the graph. That's just kind of how I show my work if I asked you to show your work, okay? Okay, for number 2, what kind of function is that? What does it say? A square root function. And what does that look like? A square root, good. Okay, so when I need to identify A, H, and K, what information do I have? It says was compressed by 1/2 and reflected over the x-axis. What does that mean? A is 1/2, is that it? Oh, why is it negative? Good, compressed by 1/2 and reflected. How much did I move left or right? 0. I didn't move left and right at all, so that H value is going to be 0. K as well, because I didn't move up or down. So to write this as an equation, I have f of x equals what? Negative 1/2. Okay, then what else, Jacob? Square root of x. Now, if you did a -0 for h and a +0 for k, is that okay? Can you do that? You can. You're not wrong, but this way is going to be the way we normally write it. You guys okay back there? Next, I have to graph. So which table am I going to use? The first, second, or third? The third one. Okay, thank you. I heard Sarah. I was waiting for some more replies. So this is my third table for my square root. Do I have an a value to multiply by this time? No. Negative 1/2. So what is 0 times negative 1/2? Good. What is 1 times negative 1/2? What is 1 times anything? It's going to be negative 1/2. Yeah, because 1 times anything is itself. And what about 2 times negative 1/2? What is that? Negative 1. And for those of you who are confused, remember that's 2 over 1 times negative 1 over 2. Which is that? Which is negative 1, okay? So now the points I'm going to graph are my new points, my new y values. So my old x, my new y. So let's draw our axes. And I'm going to graph. So I have 0, 0, 1, negative 1/2, which is halfway down, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And that will be my equation. Or sorry, that will be my graph of my function. Number 3. What kind of function is number 3? What does this one say? Cubic. And what does cubic look like? X to the third. Good. X cubed. I heard both of you. Okay, then it says that was stretched by a factor of 2. And shifted down 2. Or sorry, stretched by a factor of 3 and shifted down 2. So let's find A, H, and K. So first it says stretched by a factor of 3. Is that A, H, or K? A. And then what else does it say? Shifted down 2. Is that H or is that K? That is K. And what kind of sign is that? A negative 2. Do I have an H value? No. Do I move left or right at all then? No. If I don't have an H value, I don't go left or right. So let's write this into our equation. I have f of x equals, what's next? 3. Then what? X cubed. Then what? Minus 2. And the minus 2 goes on the outside because it's up and down. When it's with the x on the inside, that means it's with the parentheses left and right. Okay, before we graph, we need to make our table. Which table do I use? 1, 2, or 3? 1. Good. -1, -1, 0, 0. And 1, 1. Do I have an a value to multiply by? Yes. What is it?
3.
Good. So what is -1 times 3? What is 0 times 3? And 1 times 3 is positive 3. Okay, so I'm going to plot those points first. So I have -1, -3, 0, 0, and 1, 3. Is that my final graph? No, what else do I have to do to it? Shift it down 2. Each of those points needs to go down 2 units. Now, does my cubic, is that the one that's vertical or horizontal? Does it look like this? Or does it look like this? Was it 1 or 2? Is this the cubic? Or is this the cubic? Look in your toolkits. Is it this one or the other one? It's this one, okay. Cubic, x to the 3rd power, is the vertical looking graph like that. Cube root is the one that lays on its side. So this, that's the cube root, okay? That's what a cube root graph looks like. Yeah, that would be a useful tool to put in your kit. The difference between the 2 graphs. And let's look at number 4 before I have you do 5 and 6. On number 4, what is the function? What kind of function is that? A cube root. We just learned something useful about that. And what does a cube root look like? That's horizontal, and it's not the square root of 3. It's a cube root of 3. So we're going to put a radical whose index is 3. That means cube root. They are not the same thing. Square root only refers to if it's a 2. That's called a radical, not a square root. Okay, now I have to identify A, H, and K. What's the next piece of information that I'm given? Okay, reflected. Is that A, H, or K? A, and what sign is it? Negative. Okay, shifted left 7, is that H or K? H. And what sign is that? Negative. And then finally shifted up 2, which one's that? That one is K. Yes, I heard it, thank you. Now, to write this as an equation, I have f of x equals what? Negative what? Okay, -1, but what else comes next? The cube root. Yeah, I could put parentheses, or I can just start by writing the cube root of x. Then what? Do you know how to write this as an equation? Why is it +7?
Because it's the opposite.
Yes. So not only is it the opposite sign in this case, it's because, please listen, look up at the board. So if I have the cube root of x minus h plus k, because that's normally what we have, right? Remember we wrote this down last week? Please look up at the board. Okay, my h value, we already said, was -7. What is minus a negative? That's how I get x plus 7 inside like that. That's why it's a plus 7. Not because it's the opposite, it's because it's minus and negative. And then finally, I have a plus 2 on the outside. Okay, when I'm graphing, which table am I going to use? 1, 2, or 3? Which table am I using? 1, table 1. And do I have an a value to multiply by? What is it? -1. So that means I get 1, 0, and -1 like that. So I know my graph needs to go left 7 and up 2, so I'm going to try to make that the biggest quadrant in the left 7 up 2 area. Are you okay?
No.
Why not? Let's keep going. Once you all compose yourselves. I'm at -1, +1. 0, 0, and 1, -1. Each of these points needs to go left 7 and up 2. So I'm going to label my axis. This is the first time I've done it today. I'm sorry. So if I go left 7, that puts me here. And I want to go up 2 from there, so this will be my final point. Left 7 puts me here. Up 2. And then left 7. Up 2. Is this the right graph? Is that my cube root graph? No. Remember, this is the horizontal one, so it lays on its side. It looks like this. And that's actually backwards because it's a reflection. So it's flipped from what it normally looks like. This is how it looks when it's reflected, okay? Can you do 5 and 6 right now for me, please? I'll give you about 5 minutes to work on them. Okay, both of them are going to come up at the same time. So if you're not ready for number 6, don't look yet. But here are both of the answers for the U tries. With the equation and with the graph. So check your answers if you're ready, please. Look at number 9. It says write the equation of the depicted graph. So all that's given to me is the graph itself. I need to just write the equation. I also like to identify AH and K here because it makes it easier for me to identify the equation. So first, what kind of graph is this? What's the name of it? Cube. What kind? Ik or cube root? Cube ik. Okay, so x raised to the 3rd power. So I know that will be the kind of equation I use when I write my function name. And I also know that when I have an x cubed graph, this is normally, so right here, this is normally where my points, where my points are. Is that true? Okay. So, if I moved each of my original points, each of my graphed points on the blue one, back there, let's see where I end up, okay? So, I know I have to go down 1 to get to the back, and then we're going to come over here. Okay, so how many across did I move? 4, okay? So I moved 4 horizontally and 1 vertically. So, if red is normally my parent graph, red is normally where I start, correct? Or incorrect? Look, let's start again. Okay, the red graph is normally what I have, right? That's my parent function. Yeah. To get to the blue graph, this is going to be my middle point that corresponds to this one. Do you agree with me? Yeah. Okay, so to move from there, I need to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. So that means H is 4. And then I need to move 1 up. Do you agree with that? Okay. Now, if I did that, I would end up with a point here, with a point here, and with a point here. Is that what my new blue graph looks like, or does it have a different point? It has a different point. It has a point right here. So what does that mean? It's stretched. Yeah, that means it's stretched by a factor of how much? How much is it stretched by?
2.
It's stretched by 2 because what happens is if I move that whole blue graph over back to my origin, I would end up with my point right here. So I can see that it's been stretched by a factor of 2. So to write that as an equation, I have f of x equals 2 times x minus 4 quantity cubed plus 1. Okay, let's finish number 10 real quick. What kind of graph is that? Tell me the name. Square root. Okay. And that normally goes through these points. It is flipped, reflected, which A is -1. What about H? Did I move left or right? I moved left 1. And then did I move up or down at all? No. So K is 0. So I have f of x equals negative square root of x plus 1.